Well, it's a pretty unique time. I've been in ministry 47 years and never have experienced what we're experiencing, not as a nation, but as a world. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Just last night I was wondering, do I need to change my message? And we were in our pre-service prayer time, and someone was praying and saying, if Bud's supposed to change the message, then let him know that. And afterwards, Pastor Ricks we were praying over the auditorium, and he said, I'm just wondering if you need to go in a different direction. And then someone else confirmed that as well. And I knew early on it was from the Lord, but just want to share with you some things. I want to start by, though, just addressing where we are at as a church, because we've had a lot of people asking questions. And what we're going through is pretty unique. Not in my lifetime have I seen it. Back Spanish influenza, of course, at the end of World War I did travesty to the world. Nothing like that is happening today, but it's still a time when there's a lot of unknowns, and so we're carefully just trying to be cautious and trying to be faith-filled at the same time. A lot of fear out there. So a few things we're going to share, and then I'm going to talk about a biblical response to the time we're in. As I said, it's a time for caution, clarity, but not fear. Jesus said, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. So we're watching what's going on, and we're really seeking to respond responsibly. We're talking to some of our people who are in the medical field. The reason we didn't do the hugging and the handshaking is they say that's one of the easiest way to transfer the virus. And I have to tell you, I've had the shakes. Because I want to hug people so bad, and people start reaching hands. Someone walked up to me after service last night, brand new couple in service, and the guy gives me a hug, and I'm thinking, oh man, how bad? And I responded warmly to him, and I didn't mind the hug at all. But we're trying to be as careful as we can. We already realize that this is a virus that is a flu virus, but for our seniors, it can be really serious, and some of you are thinking, well, that would be you, wouldn't it, Bud? Well, yeah, it would be technically, although I'm pretty healthy when it comes to respiratory. We're going to be listening carefully to CDC, to the federal, to the state dictates. We want you to know if the state dictates that we close for a couple of weeks, we will do that. We're not going to be in rebellion to that, but we will be posting online, live streaming our service, and we just invite you to tune in there. There are a number of churches, southern part of the state and in the Bangor area, doing that today. We do encourage you, if you have compromised health, or give you permission. It's tough to give these seniors permission because they're going to do what they're going to do, and you're all down there saying it with a smile on your face. But if you feel like when we're having service that you're not comfortable, we want you to know that we bless that. And it's not just seniors, it's people that have other health issues as well. As I said, we're planning to stream online. It looks like for those of you in Pastor Rick's class on Wednesdays, he's going to do some kind of online presence and do his lesson this week online, so you can pick that up as well. If you have questions about that, just check in at the office or check online and we'll have information there. This week, just for the week, we've canceled all our midweek activities, not because we think all of them are a threat, but there's a lot of immediate relationship in fairly significant sized groups. And just till things settle down and we get a handle on what's going on, we thought that might be wise. We're doing it for several reasons. One is the fact that we have volunteers that are coming in, and they really don't have much choice. We've given them permission to opt out. But we're just taking a week and just taking a step back for that time. All right, I want to particularly remind you that the volunteer appreciation event that we had planned, we had 150 volunteers. So I'm having another one of those moments that were planned to be here for a great time of celebration for the work. Tomorrow night, we'll postpone it till further notice. And we're going to keep you posted throughout the week. We're not canceling next weekend as yet. We'd only make that decision when the proper time comes. So you can be rest assured we'll get that information out well ahead of time. Regarding, a lot of people want to know what I'm going to do with my tithes and offerings. You can mail them in. The offices are going to be open all week. We're going to operate there. If you need counseling, if you need help, if anything like that, we're definitely going to be operating as normal in those areas. But as I say, giving online, mailing it, bringing it by the office, all of those are fine, and we welcome you to come. We do want to say, if you're a volunteer and you don't feel like you're comfortable about keeping an assignment over the next few weeks, hopefully not months, that we'll be dealing with this, that you just say, look, not comfortable, say, hey, God bless you, you serve well, and you take that week off, we'll find someone else. Today is a National Day of Prayer, called for by a president. We're going to be observing that for a few moments at the end of our service. But I wanted to, now that's kind of the advertisement, I want to share with you for a few minutes about this. And I'm glad you're here because God can use these times. And there's a passage in John chapter 16, verses 28 to 33, that I want us to read together. And Jesus is talking to his disciples, and it's just before his crucifixion. He said, I came from the Father and have come into the world, and now I'm leaving the world and going to the Father. And his disciples said, now you are speaking plainly and not using figurative speech. Now we know that you know all things, and you do not need anyone to question you. This is why we believe that you came from God. And Jesus answered them, do you now believe? Behold, the hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. And Jesus is talking about, of course, the fact that the disciples all deserted him in that time of crisis. And the truth of the matter is, we're going to talk about this, fear causes people to do strange things. And a lot of fear going on. But Jesus said this, yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. And then the key verse, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. That's the best news that I can give you today, is that God's bigger than any virus. He's bigger than any other issue. He's bigger than your financial issues. He's bigger than your relationship issues. He is God. But some things that, we're asking ourselves right now, it's kind of unsettling, isn't it? Someone was talking about an event that was held locally, and it looked as if just the closest connected relatives were at the event because people are nervous, and understandably so. And some come in and tell me, I was at a meeting with pastors, some of the pastors, it's all a hoax. Other guys were saying, man, we need to take this serious. And there's a lot of tension about this. And we know that it's pushed beyond norm. It's gone at warp speed when it comes to what's going on in the news. And when you really compare flu bugs and COVID, it's not a whole lot of difference. But the truth is, we need to be serious about what's going on. 3 or 4 thoughts. Fear has magnified what's going on in our society right now. We're a society-based fear. It's said in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, in love, in self-control. And the King James puts self-control down as a sound mind. One of the things that I really want to encourage you to do as you think about all that's going on, as you hear all the news, do not be fear-based. There's something about fear that cancels out our thinking. And as believers, we need to face whatever's going on with peace and confidence. And that's one thing I have. I truly am not nervous because I know who's in control, and so do you. And they were singing some of those songs about, up from the ashes, and about all the things that God is and God does. It's time to apply it in a real-life space. So how do we react in a world frozen with fear? I remember years ago, and I started this story last night, and I really made a huge mistake. I was talking about a girlfriend I had back years ago, and I don't know how I got tongue-tied, but I said, a girlfriend I had about 9 years ago. My wife's head shot up. See, it was here. I said, I don't know what I'm talking about, because it was 45 years ago, and it really was, honest. And I guarantee you I got some razzing when I got home. In fact, when I left church, my wife called and said, well, you know what our daughter did? I said, no, what did Taylor do? She said, I took her by Governor's. She hadn't had a chance to eat because she'd been working before service. And I said, pick me up a lemon square. And Taylor comes out with her lunch, no lemon square. And my wife wasn't really happy with her. And I said, well, you want me to run by and pick it up? No, don't you bother. Well, I know better than that. She was lying. And I said, no, I'll go by and get it. And then she says, then I might forgive you for that stupid comment you made tonight about 9 years ago. But anyway, 45 years ago, I dated this girl, and she was a very sweet girl. She had a great family. She loved her dad. And she was, we were good friends. It certainly wasn't something that either of us realized fairly soon that it wasn't supposed to go anywhere. But we still had a great friendship. And I was visiting her home one of the first times that I was there, and I found out that none of us are perfect. All you that are married know that. But I found out that she had a fear. Her fear was cats. She was absolutely terrified of cats. I see you poking your wife down there. And I bet you the 4 or 5 of you like that here today. Actually, my first wife, Kathy, had a fear of frogs. If you have a fear of frogs, don't drive in a rainstorm in the county in the summer. There are thousands of them on the road, and she would be like that with them hopping all over the place. But anyway, we're in the kitchen, we're laughing, talking with the family, and in the family cat, they have a cat. A barn cat came into the house. Well, my girlfriend at the time, she took off like someone had a rocket installed inside her, just screaming. And her dad picked that moment and said, I'm going to help her get over the fear of cats. And he grabbed her around the waist as she went racing by him and said, that's not going to bother you at all. I am here to tell you, he thought he had a whole handful of tomcats on his head because she started punching him and striking. She loved her dad to death, but fear had taken over. And I was kind of amused, but that didn't get me any points either. But what I'm thinking about when I thought of that is we live in a world full of fear. And there's a lot of fear going on. In fact, I was reading an article I thought was very interesting. He said one of the difficult things going on now is everybody's afraid. And a health expert wrote this in an article. He said we're in this fear state, and fear turns down the immune system. When you spread fear to your friends, it's almost like spreading germs to them. Well, I've seen that in the spiritual realm for sure. I've seen that in relationships. And you and I need to understand the greatest gift that I can give to the people around me, especially people who do not know Jesus, is faith and calmness. And I was thinking about this. The last thing that I want to say to you is you should not make fun if you know people that are very afraid. It's not the time. It's a time to have sympathy and to care and concern, because you have an opportunity to speak in people's lives. And if you're here and you're quite fearful, listen, love you to death. We all have our fears, and we'd love to pray with you. Historically, the church has responded in a powerful way in times of fear. And often those conversations that we have, they start building bridges to a life of faith. You know, one of the scary things today is that, you remember 9/11? Those of you that were in the church after 9/11 know that after 9/11, our churches were packed. I mean, the crowds went up exponentially. Churches were crowded out for a while, and then it died off. Whenever there's a crisis, people run to the church. I was listening to that conversation like that on the television yesterday afternoon, just listening to a report. What is so strange about this virus is people can't run to the church because the crowds, and we're limited, by the way, and some people actually had asked, you said, can we even have service, because we're not recommend not exceed over 250. And I said, I think we're going to self-regulate this weekend. As you can see, many are gone. And that's not because they don't have faith. Some people are staying away because they have a cold. And right now, if someone's sitting beside you and burying their head in their arm and coughing, you're going to be nervous. And so some have respected that. Others just have felt that they needed to take a very conservative approach. I ordered my father-in-law not to come to church. So he's pouting at home right now. I went in to see him last night, and he said, it has been so hard, just like me with the hugging. But here's what I want to say to you. Faith carries the day. Faith carries the day. In Psalm 9, and I don't think I gave you this reference, so I'll look it up. And I scribbled it down. I hope I scribbled down the right note. So I think, in fact, it's Psalm 91. Yes, Psalm 91, verses 1 to 6. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he'll deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You'll not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. It goes on and talks there about 1,000 fall aside, 10,000. People say, well, if I read that, does that mean I won't get sick? No, it really doesn't mean that. And sometimes people take that verse and they read it and they quote it as if somehow that God has obligated himself that we'll never go through difficult times. I can't guarantee you that. I believe there are Christians already that have had the virus, and more are going to have it, and some of them are going to have serious issues with it. You have to take Scripture in balance. What I can tell you is this: God will shield you from fear, and he will strengthen you. And I really want us to realize we have a great opportunity with faith. I'm thankful, by the way, for a president who stands up and said, we need a national day of prayer. And we're going to give us a chance to pray at the end of this service. And President Trump has done that. And then it was interesting to look at the former Surgeon General, and I can't remember his name this morning. He was running for president last time around, didn't make it, but he was one of the candidates. Spoke yesterday, and he said, I am so grateful for the opportunity that we have to draw people back to thinking through the eyes of faith. He said, our nation needs prayer, and our nation needs faith. Amen? Absolutely, a perfect opportunity. And it was so interesting because there's a much younger man who's now the new Attorney General, and he was standing behind the former Attorney General who was sharing this, and he was nodding his head, and he was all about it, and I thought, wow, this is a pretty impressive time. And just was thinking about that and reminded of a passage of Scripture that we've been studying a bunch in a band of brothers that I'm involved in on Thursdays. And it found from the book of Joshua, and actually starts in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 31 was where it begins the story, and it's the transition time when Joshua is going to be replacing Moses as the leader of Israel. And first of all, Moses says this to his people in verse 6 of chapter 31, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, talking about the enemy they're going to face, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He'll not leave you nor forsake you. And then it says, it goes on in verse 7, after Moses has talked to Joshua, or talked to the people, then he talks to Joshua, who's to become the new leader. And he says, then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and courageous. Joshua, that's what who's talking to. For you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He'll not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. If there's something that you need to do, you need to pray for your family, and you need to exercise faith. There's something about faith and courage, and he's emphasizing this so much here. But then we jump over to the book of Joshua, and in Joshua chapter 1, verses 6 through 9, he begins to speak again, and he says this, speaking in, I just want to make sure the Lord is speaking to Joshua here. Be strong and courageous. Just told him that. Now he's telling him again, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. And then it goes on and says, and you will have good success. And then it drops down into verse 9. And he says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be frightened, do not be dismayed. 7 times in those passages, which are very close together in those 2 books, God says, be strong and courageous. Why is God repeating it? Sometimes my daughter, when I'm telling her to do something, she'll say, Dad, I heard you. Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure you heard you. Maybe Joshua in his mind saying, God, I heard you. I know what I'm supposed to do. Why was God doing that? Because God knows the key to whatever battle you're facing tonight, and let's take it out of the coronavirus picture. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever battles you have, relationship battles, battles with sin in your life, battles with fear, courage and strength is what God has for us. And it's extraordinary, and strength and courage are always a prerequisite for accomplishing things for God. If you think of Daniel in the lion's den, you think of David and Goliath. David could not have taken the sling. By the way, if you're shaking like that, you can't use a sling. You can't even get the rock in it. David was very calm because he was full of courage and he was full of faith. I think of Gideon, who God reduced his army from 33,000 men to 300 men who had strength and courage. And so God calls us to that. And I've discovered something. In 47 years of ministry, every place that I have ever pastored, there were key critical times that weren't easy, times that were difficult, or times that caused to a challenge of faith. And every time, the key was you had to have courage. You had to step out. And I actually love over in Joshua chapter 3, verse 13, God gives one more instruction to Israel. They have to cross the Jordan River. It's at flood stage. The waters are high. And he said, Joshua, and so God tells them, have the priests go down and stand in the water. And he said, then I'll roll back to Jordan. You walk across. We know that Bible story. But here's what God says specifically. He said, when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan. In other words, when you're standing in it, the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. In other words, they just separate. When does it happen? He said, when you step in the water. So here's the thought. As Christians, we need to step into the water, whether it's dealing with this or something else. I remember early in my ministry, I was senior pastor at 22. That is a joke. And I remember a year in, I said, man, we need to start a Sunday school. I had 2 little churches, and I thought, they can do a Sunday school in the morning while I'm preaching at the other church, and then we'll do service at night, we were just doing service this morning and night. So I talked to the church, they weren't exactly wealthy. I got $60 a week for salary. I drove 30,000 miles that year. So I really didn't make a lot of money. And the church didn't have a lot of money, but I don't forget what we paid for the bus. I think it was like $1,000. And I had no clue where that was coming from, but we decided to make the commitment. We called, we purchased a bus, and money started coming from anywhere. And I remember I was driving down to Halifax from Shelburne, about a 3.5-hour drive at that time. And I was driving along, and there's a guy in front of me, and we're clipping along about 60. We were on a pretty good highway. And all of a sudden, this kitten comes bouncing down the road that jumped out of the trunk of the car in front of me. No kid, never had that happen before or since. Back in those days, they had no inspection, and apparently the trunk of the car had a big rust hole in it, and this kitten bails out at 60 miles an hour and goes just rolling. And of course, I felt terrible. I pulled over, and I said, I better go check on the thing, and I'm probably going to have to do something because I'm sure it's near dead. And here's this little kitten haunched up, and he's going, just shaking like a leaf, and I can understand that. And I picked it up, and it really wasn't injured. So I put the kitten in the car and took him with me, and actually took him home and adopted him. The only problem was he peed all over my legs when he was sitting in my lap on the way home. That wasn't very good. But picked his cat. But I was thinking, I feel like about that cat right now. I'm scared to death we can't pay for that bus. And I was I'm a kid preacher, and I said, I'm asking to do this thing, and how am I going to bail myself out of this? And you know what was interesting? Like, when I was pastored in Easton, I left Shelburne and came to Easton and pastored in Easton. We had a green Sunday school bus. I think Presque Isle had one or two blue buses. And all of us were knocking on doors. In a 40 below zero cold, we'd be knocking on doors, getting kids to get on our bus. That little old bus, that little green bus down in Shelburne, well, it was a regular-sized bus. We would drive it through town. We'd stop 4 or 5 places where we knew kids hung out, and they would come running out of the house and fill it up. And our sign was, when the bus was so full we couldn't get anybody else on, we'd go to the Sunday school. We'd pick up 70 or 80 kids in that bus. I know it's illegal, but I was silly back in that time and silly now, but it was amazing. And it reminded me, for all of us, like the person that you have a burden about that should know Jesus and you really like to share with them, you're afraid to do it, till you have courage, they're not going to find Jesus. Everything in life comes with that. And I love the song they were singing, all of my life you have been faithful. All of my life you've been so, so good. It's that song about the goodness of God. So here's what I say to you. We have an opportunity. And that's what this is. I'm not excited about COVID-19. I'm not excited about the fact that we have a virus running and that a lot of people I love could become sick. And we'll see how it all pans out. Maybe a bunch of it is hype, but I'm not daring to say that right now. I think it's pretty serious business. One thing I know about this world is money talks. And when we're losing billions of dollars, I suspect there's some things that, at least from a world's point of view, we need to be concerned about. So what do? How can we be Jesus in this kind of environment? There's 1 John chapter 3, 16 to 24. I want to read that with you. It goes like this. By this we know love, that he, Jesus, laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has this world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and truth. You know, one of the things that's scary to me is the shortages we're showing up with. You know why? Because of fear. There is no toilet paper. Crazy. And a Christian friend of Irene and I, she's young, but she posted on Facebook yesterday, I have enough toilet paper to last to December. You know what I say to her? Share it. Come on. Don't be fear-based. That isn't sending the message that I beat the lady who's raising 3 kids on her own and works a job and couldn't get there before it sold out. I got my share and I got a little more, and good luck to you. Isn't it funny what fear does? I was into Walmart and I was amazed. I said I got to look for myself, and sure enough, on the aisle with the toilet paper and the paper towels, there was nothing. We needed a little Kleenex, and I found 4 or 5 small boxes at the other end. And what was kind of cool is I was looking, and Irene has to have scent-free because of her asthma, and I couldn't find any scent-free stuff, and I was kind of looking, and lady said, you're still looking for, because there were some boxes of Kleenex there there was not many, but a few, but I couldn't take them because they had to have lotion in it, and that makes Irene very, very congested, and that's not a good thing with all that's going around. And so I just said, well, no, I got to find something that's scent-free. And this lady said, well, I just picked up scent-free, but I don't need it. She started taking out of her, maybe she was a Christian trying to witness to me. I looked like a heathen the other day. I looked like a redneck. It was my day off. I don't know, but I thought, that's cool. But what an opportunity you and I have. What an opportunity to be Jesus. I remember when I was my first pastorate, and there were struggling churches, and I was trying to find keys to make a difference. And we had this great big old hurricane that came through, and it was vicious. And it just tore everything apart, and all the lobster fishermen had their traps out, and literally there were just giant piles of rope where they just wrapped them all up because they're in the shore in Nova Scotia at that point in time, and just destroyed them. And so they were desperate. They were trying to rescue traps, find traps and all that, and they were trying to get these ropes untangled. And I remember going down and spending 2 or 3 days on the wharf just untangling rope. It drive you nuts. But I remember the difference it made in my relationships to some unsaved men. Well, we get people that are hurting. Really do. We have people that are full of fear. Someone shared with me that someone from our church was talking to some people where they work, and a couple of the men were unsaved and said, "We're terrified." What a great chance for a witness. See, people can't run to the church. It's not like 9/11. But people still want to engage in conversations. And pray about this. Lord, just give me somebody I can talk to who needs to talk about their fear. Because God is one that answers fear. The Bible says in 1 John 3:18, "Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth." And we have the opportunity to love people and to be a witness. And I'm praying about that. Something else that we can do is we can take the opportunity to serve other people. I encourage you to do this, and Pastor Rick's going to put something online to help you if you want to do this. If we go through this and things get shut down a little more, maybe some people are sick, elderly are really needing to stay in, maybe you could think of a neighbor. And it's great. We have folks in our church, and we want you to know we do this too. Maybe they really shouldn't go out, and you can go to the door and say, can I just pick up groceries for you? Can I buy something for you? Maybe there's a family that we're going to find out has got the flu and they've been quarantined. And you could just slip by and just let them know, I'm going to leave a meal on your steps. We're healthy at our house. That is practical Christianity. That is serving people where they hurt and helping them and lifting them and encouraging them. Because I think that this is an opportunity for us to make a difference. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 14 says something else that I think is really important. It says, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land." Well, there's a lot that we could extrapolate out of that. But I do know this, the greatest thing you and I can do is pray. Because it is serious time. We need to pray for a lot of things. We need to pray for our medical. We have a bunch of medical people in our church. They could be overwhelmed. Pray for them. Pray for their health. Pray for their safety. Pray for calm among our elderly. Pray for faith to be present. Pray for an opportunity to share your faith with someone who has none. Because God is as good as it gets. God knows, God understands us, God cares. He's a friend we can trust. Well, we're going to have the worship team lead us in a song. And while we do that, and I'm going to do this myself, and I invite you to join me. I'd really like that a lot of you, that you could do it in your seats, and we're just going to take a few minutes together as a church as part of our service. But we're going to open our altars for a time of prayer. And just pray for our nation, pray for our world. The reality is every storm that comes is an opportunity for Jesus to be shown. And one of the people that would never talk to you about faith a month ago, they may be glad to hear that you're praying for them. They may be glad to hear that you care. So in a minute, the worship team is going to lead us in a song, and I'm going to go down and pray. And I would, we can gather around the altars. The altars fill up, then you can stand behind or kneel behind. We're going to take 4 or 5 minutes just to pray, and then we're going to have prayer together, and they're going to sing a very precious song, and we'll dismiss our service. But thank you for being here. And remember that these opportunities are opportunities that are unique. And you're positioned, if you are a person of faith, to make a difference in people's lives. So the altars are open. I invite you to come and to join me while we pray for our nation and as we respond to the requests from our president. And you can stand or you can be seated while they sing, and you can come forward and pray, or you can pray in your seats.